on November 15th, 1967. U.S. Air Force Major Michael J. Adams climbed into the cockpit of X-15 No. 3 at Edwards Air Force Base. It was his 7th flight in the experimental rocket plane. At 37, Adams was an experienced test pilot chosen for the X-15 program because of his exceptional skill with high-performance aircraft. He was even being considered for NASA's astronautoko. The X-15 program explored the boundary between conventional flight and space, reaching altitudes above 50 miles, where normal aircraft could not operate. Adams's mission, Flight 36597, called for him to reach about 250,000 feet. He would test a new ultraviolet stellar photography experiment and evaluate reaction controls in near-space conditions. By X-15 standards, the plan was demanding but not extraordinary. At 10:30 a.m., a modified B-52 released the X-15 from its wing at 45,000 feet over the Mojave Desert. Adams ignited the XL-99 rocket engine, producing about 57,000 pounds of thrust. The aircraft climbed steeply and accelerated to over 3,800 miles per hour. Adams reported normal performance during the powered ascent. The X-15 reached its peak altitude of roughly 266,000 feet, crossing the threshold of space by U.S. definition. That flight would later be recognized as an astronaut qualifying mission. During the high-altitude coast phase, something went wrong with attitude control. The X-15 began an unintentional yaw, a sideways rotation that was hard to detect in the thin air. At that altitude, aerodynamic feedback is minimal. Pilots receive few physical cues. The reaction control system, designed to keep the craft stable in near vacuum, did not correct the motion as intended. Adams found himself in a slowly worsening situation. As the X-15 began descending back into denser air, the yaw motion increased, and the aircraft entered a spin. He attempted to regain control using the regular aerodynamic control surfaces. But at such high altitude and extreme speed, they had limited authority. Ground controllers tracked the unusual trajectory on radar and tried to advise Adams. Radio contact was intermittent, interrupted by the ionized gas, a plasma sheath, around the hypersonic vehicle. As the X-15 passed through about 200,000 feet, the atmosphere thickened. In theory, this should have helped Adams regain control using conventional flight controls. However, the angle of attack had become extreme. The aircraft was effectively skidding sideways through the air at more than 3,000 miles per hour. Aerodynamic loads on the airframe rose rapidly. At around 65,000 feet and roughly Mach 3.5, the forces exceeded the structural limits. The X-15 began to break apart. Sections separated from the main fuselage as the aircraft disintegrated. Adams experienced forces estimated at over 15 G. He likely lost consciousness before the final breakup. The main wreckage impacted the ground near Johannesburg, California, leaving a crater several feet deep. Adams was found still in his seat. The ejection system had never been activated. Investigators concluded that the adaptive flight control system had malfunctioned at high altitude, triggering the yaw that Adams could not overcome. The loss of X-15 Flight 36597 lead to improvements in training for high-altitude flight and in backup control systems for vehicles operating at the edge of space. Adams was posthumously awarded astronaut wings for his flight.